so first up we got 4 of the 2-cost Brannews. So let's talk a little bit about this card. Besides the fact that this card is a great Navy searcher, has this card had any impact in your build in terms of shoving more Navy cards into the deck for consistency? Or was this kind of a card chosen to be one of the 2-cost targets for the 8-drop Gecko Moria? What would you say is the main purpose of this card?
Yeah, so as you can see, most of the cards in my deck are big bombs and mid-sized threats. So you need something to do in the early turns, like before they play cards. So the Navy package is really great for that. So you want to play like 4 Brannews and then some of the admirals like Kuzan and Borsalino, because you're not really doing anything in your first couple turns. If they don't play any creatures, you're not tapping them and doing the standard Ryuma combo. Another thing is it's very important for you to see a Brannew because your Gecko Moria plays are very weak without it, because unlike Sakazuki and Gecko Moria where you constantly put cards in the graveyard, this deck doesn't really have that much ability to put cards in graveyard. So Brannew is a great enabler to help fill your grave a little bit before you get to the 8 Dawn turn.
I got you. And since there are actually a few other people that have played Perona and maybe you've seen a little bit on their build, from your personal experiences, do you actually think Brannew is kind of a must, or is there room to potentially do a Perona build without the Brannew?
So interesting enough, I played against one of my matches that we'll talk about later. I played a mirror match and he wasn't running any of the Navy or any of the Don Quixote pirates. He was running pure Wano, which I think is a great option in OPO7 once you get access to the 0-drop Otama. But as before OPO7, I don't think the deck is consistent enough to play cards that let you abuse Will You Be My Samurai, which is the whole reason to play the Wano package. It's 1 mana, draw 2 cards, tap two of your creatures. But without the Otama, you cannot efficiently play cards and search through your deck to find it and play it. So I think playing the Brannew pre-OPO7 is a must.
Okay, so you think it just as you said, like pretty much pre-OPO7, like you kind of have to run the Brannew. Whereas after once, OPO7 gets started up, there are room for option builds to just not run Brannew.
Yes.
Okay, got you. And then next up, we got 4 of the 1-cost baby 5s. So just like Brannew, is this another card choice that helps to dig into the deck to see your Don Quixote cards, while also giving your 8-drop Gecko another 2-cost target? And from your experience, has this card successfully been able to dig and search the Don Quixote cards you need, or has it been kind of 50-50 due to the Don Quixote ratio?
Yeah, so if you look at my actual build, the Don Quixote pirates and Navy pirates, I have about 22 to 24 each hit. So you have to play this deck, in my opinion, you have to maximize your hits. Otherwise, you're just spinning your wheels and playing cards and breaking. And the one thing that this deck lacks very much so before OPO7 is card advantage. So if you whiff, you're pretty far behind on either of them. So you want to max out on targets. I think I run like 8 non-targets for my 2 searchers. Baby 5 is really good in general. It helps you find the help of the deck, I would call it. The Rosinantes, which are great at saving your creatures and early blockers. It helps you find the bomb of your deck, which is 10-drop Doffy, which is like the most important part, which is why I think the deck is playable at the moment. It's just like you get to 10 Dawn, you start slamming them, and your opponent doesn't really get to play the game, and you get to do whatever you want. I also run 2 of the 0-cost events, which comes in clutch because I run so many bombs. I'll explain it why I ran those later, but I think it's a great card that you have to run because it gives you another thing to do on 2 Dawn or 4 Dawn turn if they're not playing any creatures.
Got you. And since we do see in the build, we have 4 of the 1-cost babies and then 4 of the 2-cost Brannews. Would that inherently mean your deck is actually better and a lot more consistent going second, or what is your kind of thoughts going first or second as Perona?
Yeah, so the deck definitely wants to go second. It can go first. Don't get me wrong. The deck is still great going first. Not as good, but it can survive. It can still do its thing, but you definitely want to go second because your curve is very much even. You have the 2-cost Brannew, 2-cost baby 5 on 1. 4, you have Kuzan, Ryuma, and Borsalino. 6, you can Sabo or do like a combination of a Searcher and a Kuzan Brannew Ryuma. 8, obviously Gecko Moria. 10, Doflamingo. And then you can mix and match in between there. But definitely want to be on an even curve for pretty much every matchup except like 1.
Gotcha. Okay, then next up, we got 4 of the 2-cost Rosinante. So not only is this card a Don't Get It searchable card and a blocker that protects any of your rested characters, what matchups would you say this card actually has the most impact and pressure in? As well as which matchups would you actually say this card might fall short or have little to no effectiveness? What have you been experiences on that?
Yeah, so I think that card, the Rosinante, is an excellent card. It gives you an early play if you're against a non-aggressive deck. It is the most important card if you randomly see a Yamato deck, which I did indeed see one in the tournament. It is so important to be able to play that on 2, block at 8 ball attack so you don't go to 2 life. Pretty decent, and it's actually probably only good in that matchup, and then like random matchups. In the meta, it's actually not very good. It's not very good against Gecko. They can just attack, put an Absol into play, pop it,
Right.
or against Law. Law will just spin it back and play a dude. So the two mainstream matchups, it's not very good, but I do think you still have to play it, obviously, because you want to max out on Don Quixote Pirates. It is a 2-drop blocker. So there are builds that run 8-drop Kid. I will explain why I didn't play it later, but it is a very, very good card to put into play with 8-drop Kid, but I do not play 8-drop Kid, but I do think you have to play it just because it is a Don Quixote Pirate. It is counter, and it's a blocker and comes in handy sometimes. It's just okay in the mainstream deck, but it is really good against like almost every other deck. Just the two mainstream decks, like Gecko and Law. I think it's really bad against Law. I think it's okay against Gecko. Like it'll come in clutch randomly against Gecko.
Okay, so you feel like this card actually kind of covers up the Jungle Fest that was the EBO1 format for regionals, because at that format, actually from my experiences, it was very, very versatile. It was very diverse. So you feel like maybe Rosinante was just a great pick overall just for the random decks in my face. But of course, if you face the decks that was not so effective in, it wasn't such a, I don't know, drawback to have the card in the deck. You can kind of play around those matchups.
Yeah, of course. I think it is very good into every matchup. As we all know, the EBO1 is a format that's never been seen. Japan didn't have it. It didn't exist. Well, our EBO1, we only have it for 2 weeks, so people didn't really care about it, so they didn't want to test much. And I could definitely feel how lazy people were in their like deck building and deck choices and testing of the format. Everyone was just cookie cutter with the Gecko and the Law decks and stuff, but there was a bunch of people who were cooking up in the kitchen making spice. So yeah, I think it just helps cover like broad matchups, and at worst it's just a 1k counter.
Right. Okay, and then next up we have 2 of the 4-cost Kuzans. Now of course this card is a valuable piece to the puzzle. The draw 1 effect and the -4 cost while swinging I'm sure helps the strategy and the motion of the deck, but for this deck list it's only just 2. Would you just say you didn't find it necessary to run any more than 2, and has just only 2 been a good ratio from experiences? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so the 2-drop Kuzan, obviously you have to run it. It's a great card. It'll snowball the game if you could stick it and it doesn't die. Most of the time, if you ever untap with that card, you just win the game because of your leader ability. Gives your leader ability so much reach and the Ryuma to kill basically anything. I only ran 2 because it is a big brick most of the time. So after turn 6, when you get to 8 and 10 on turn, it's not really what you want to be doing. Obviously, you want to be playing your bombs to win the game. That's what the deck is, but it is necessary, and I think it is really good, especially if you have it on turn 2. You play it, it draws a card, they kill it, cool, it replaced itself, and they wasted a resource to kill it. If it lives, great. I feel like it's really hard to lose a match whenever Kuzan sticks, but in the end, it is kind of a brick after turn 6 because it's almost impossible to find chances to play it the way the format was, of how aggressive and snowbally, in my opinion, the format is. You never have like after turn 6 or after 6 dawn to 8 to 10 dawn, you never have like a room to breathe. You constantly have to be doing something, otherwise you're just going to get ran over by the main decks like Law and Gecko. They're just constantly putting dudes into play, putting pressure on you, so you never really get a chance to play it. You will obviously sometimes because you just don't have anything better to do, but it is very good. It wins the game if it sticks. If it doesn't, it redraws.
Okay, gotcha. Then next up we got 4 of the 4-cost Ryumas. So talk to us a little bit about why this card is a staple for and just how powerful of a card this is. The leader ability to Ryuma synergy, the 8-drop Gecko synergy, and how crucial it was for the EB1 format.
Yeah, so Ryuma is the only reason, in my opinion, that this deck is playable. It's why that the deck is playable in next format. It's a Wano card that KOs a 4-drop or less rested character. Your leader obviously says rest a character 4-drop or less or -1, so that works great with it. You rest the opponent's character, KO it with Ryuma, puts a 6k body into play, and then if they have to do combat math sometimes weird because Ryuma has a second effect that, you know, randomly some people don't know about, is when it's KO'd, it does the same thing. It pops a 4-drop or less. So like if they attack with one of their characters into it and it dies, it trades with that. So you got like a 3-for-1 pseudo. You blocked an attack and you KO 2 things. It is the best card in the deck, hands down. You can bring it back with Gecko. So for like big turns, you can just play Gecko, tap the dude, play Gecko, get back to Tsuru and Ryuma to reduce something to 6. And then pop it, or if it's already rested, you can pop a 7-drop, and then there's some other crazy things you can try to do to try to reach up top, but most of the time it just pops a 4 to 6-drop. But if you ever have Kuzan, then the sky is the limit. Pop everything, tap everything. But yeah, that's the best card in the deck. The only reason the deck is playable, in my opinion. It gets even better in 07 whenever you can search it, because your whole deck is Wano, so it's searchable.
Okay, gotcha. So for sure you agree this has to be a staple for it, and it's the only reason why Perona is actually competitive.
Yes, it is the bread and butter of the deck. Without it, I do not think the deck is very good.
I got you. The next up, we have 3 of the 5-cost Extric. Now, similar to Ryuma, this card is your other body removal option. However, you only ran this card as a 3-of. Was there reasoning behind only having 3 instead of maybe 4? Or is the 3 ratio just enough for the deck? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think 3 is a good number of the card because it is searchable with Brannew. It is one of your targets to search. It's a 1k counter if it's not usable, but you do need more cards to be able to KO things. It really sucks that it's a 5-drop, so you can't get it back with Gecko, but Ryuma is not searchable in the deck, so you need more ways to KO 4-drops or use your leader basically. So I think 7 was a good number. Some people are running 8, but I think 7 is too much, but I'm also playing a card that some people aren't playing, so I think 3 was a good number.
Okay, gotcha. And next up we got 3 of the 4-cost Borsalino. Now, without a doubt, Borsalino is always going to be a very valuable card, but in this build it's only a 3 of in this case. Because Borsalino typically always holds a lot of value, would you say the reasoning behind why it's only 3 is because of the deck space situation? Or is this card not needed as much to be at 4 from your experiences?
Yeah, so in my opinion, Borsalino is one of those cards that it's always good. It'll be good pretty much in every matchup. It's really, really, really good against Gecko. It's probably the best card against Gecko. But I thought that I was going to see more Law than Gecko, which I was kind of wrong about. If you get closer and look at the tables, Gecko was more
represented.
More represented, at least what I saw. I didn't actually look at the numbers, but I'm pretty sure it was.
Yeah.
But Borsalino is not that great into Law. It's good, don't get me wrong, but it normally just gets spun back by the Gordon combo with Law. And whenever you're playing against Law, you want cards that do something when they ETB. That way they just don't die for free and they just sit there. It is very, very, very good against Gecko as they have no real way to remove it other than attacking it. I wanted to fit some other cards in my deck that I couldn't find anything else to cut. The deck is like really tight. I think there's probably like 46 cards that have to be in the deck and only like 4 flex slots that you can get creative with. But cutting it down to 3 was the only thing that I could find to cut. It's also searchable with Brannew, so I didn't really have that big of a problem finding it when I needed it.
Okay, so you feel like pretty much the initial thought process being pretty much like seeing how the meta might have turned out. Was it more red purple Law? Was it more Gecko? And for sure, I could definitely agree that EB1 format for that regional, specifically in Dallas Mesquite, there was definitely a lot more representation of Gecko Moria. Now, if we were to somehow go back in time and you made the judgment call and said, okay, I think there's going to be more Geckos than RP Laws, do you think there would have been a chance in space for you to maybe bump up Borsalino up to 4 in that case, or do you think still 3 due to the the deck space?
I really do think that I would just keep running 3 as the card is good, but the deck is a very reactive deck. Generally, my Borsalinos, even in the Gecko matchup, I just attack with them. Like they're just 5k attackers that can't be KO'd and are 6k during your opponent's turn, so they're kind of troublesome to get rid of. But generally, if you just sit there, they'll attack. Like they're very easy to play around. So like your opponent knows how. If your opponent's like knows anything about the game, basically, they'll know how to attack around a Borsalino, and it'll make it really awkward. And obviously, like I said, most of the time you want your cards to get some value at when you play them. So most of the time they just attacked. I'd probably definitely keep it at 3 just because of number wise, it's hard to fit things in the deck, and they're not 4 is not necessary.
Okay, gotcha. And then we have 2 of the 6-cost Brook. Now talk to us about how insane of a tech choice this card is for the current and next format to come. Were you able to make good use of his trashing capabilities into certain matchups, as well as is the 2 ratio the right call, or could you see yourself potentially bumping this card up to 3? How has this card performed for you in the big event?
Yeah, so that was one of the tech cards that I chose to tech, and one of the reasons I had to cut some of the cards down. That's why I cut Drake down to 2, or Drake down to 3, and Borsalino down to 3 to fit the Brooks in. In my opinion, the Brook is very, very, very good into all matchups, basically, as it trashes a character, and it doesn't have to be resting. There's a second effect that Perona has that a lot of people don't know. It's reduce your opponent's character by 1. Generally, people just think it's like, oh, tap a creature, but with the combination of her other ability and Brook, you can reach up to 5 costs that are very problematic. As Sabo, when they play it, you can just get rid of the problem there and put a body into play. That way they don't have a blocker or attacker next turn. Kid is one of the biggest issues in against the Law matchup. If they ever stick a Kid, you'll start falling behind because they'll have so much Dawn coming back to them. Kid is basically a kill on sight card, and with Brook, you don't have to really invest anything, especially if you're going second. They go first, they play Kid on 5, you go to 6, reduce, play it, and then they're kind of in trouble. One of my opponents that was playing Law did not expect me to play Brook, and I KO'd his Kid, and he was like, I think I lose. It's definitely really good against the Black Yellow Luffy matchup as well. When they play their big Luffy that is very painful to get rid of. Same with Sabo. All of their cards are 5-drop. Just reduce it by 1, play Brook, get rid of it, no problem. If you ever see yellow like Enel, I really thought Enel would be more represented at the tournament, but turns out during our testing, Enel was not that great. Obviously, against Enel, it can KO Gedatsu, and most importantly, it trashes Kikanojo, and they do not gain a life. So I think it was a really, really good card. There are random like 2% times you see, and you can use its second effect against Gecko. Like if all they have is like 3 geckos in their trash, you can put them on the bottom and they'll probably never see him again, or like 2 geckos. I never did it, but I would say it can come up once in the blue moon.
Gotcha. And since from your experiences, you've had a wonderful, experience from just the 6-cost Brook and was able to do moving forward. And if you were to continue playing Perona, do you actually think the 6-cost Brook is probably a necessity for the next format in the build?
No, I don't think it's a necessity. I definitely don't think it's like super great next format. I've actually started testing Perona this format, and I have already cut it from my build due to the fact that like the format is very wide open in 07. It is probably, in my opinion, one of the healthiest formats. You can play any deck and do well. Brook is a very specific meta gamed towards EBO1 because of how like compact amount of 5 costs that were played that you needed to get rid of. In OPS 7, it's anyone's guess what you'll play against, and there are better cards to play in OPS 7.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
I think you can cut it now. I definitely would play 2 again if I would play in this playing in the regional this weekend for EBO1. I would definitely play 2 Brook, very good card. I wouldn't play 3 though. It doesn't have any counter, and a lot of times, like I said, after Dawn 6, or you're not going to be playing it. You're just going to be wanting to slam Geckos and Doffy. So I keep it at 2, but I think 2 is a very good number.
Okay, gotcha. Then we have 4 of the 5-cost Sabos. Now, is the 4 ratio Sabo something that is arguably obligatory just due to the nature of your deck and how crucial it is for you to dig for your pieces and cycle out the bricks? Or is this a card you felt is needed at max ratio just to hold yourself against certain matchups and to protect your board from KO? How important and crucial is Sabo for the deck, and in order for it to deserve a 4-slot ratio?
Yeah, so Sabo, in my opinion, has to be at 4 in this meta. It's really, really good. Like if you ever lose a dice roll, you're probably gonna go first, and your 5 Dawn, you're gonna want to play Sabo to cycle through your cards. It is very important in my opinion because you don't have very much card cycling at all or card selection. So being able to play Sabo, draw 2 cards, get rid of some bricks or cards that are worse in the matchup. Like I said, Rosinante is not good in Law. You can dump those from your hand and find good pieces that you need for that matchup. Really, really good against Gecko. It's probably one of the best cards against Gecko. There's a turn that I played against a Gecko Moria where I played a Kuzan and then played a Sabo, and it won the game single-handedly because I couldn't get rid of the Kuzan. And like I said, if Kuzan sticks, it takes over the game. So when you play that against Gecko Moria, they can't efficiently play Gecko, pop something. They'll have to do a value Gecko play, which doesn't happen very often in the deck anymore. It's more so about just killing all your stuff. And yeah, I think Sabo has to be at 4 in the meta. Same with like I said, I expected to see more Nell. I really did, but obviously I didn't. So I think Sabo is really good against that matchup too. But I definitely think it has to be a 4 just due to having no card cycling or card advantage of the deck. You need to see your deck.
Okay, gotcha. Then we have 4 of the 5-cost Vergo. Now, funny enough, I'm pretty sure this card is the most viable in the Perona deck, considering it does actually cover both Navy and Donkeyade pirate types. Would you say that this is about the only reason why this card was picked out for the 2K counter, or have you actually summoned this card on a rare occasion?
Yeah, so I think it's the only reason is because it's a 2K that's searchable by both your searchers. Doesn't have really any merit to playing it. It's a 5-drop for 5 that can't be KO'd by battle, I believe. I've played it 1 time, and the whole time I played the Perona deck just because I needed bodies to kill my opponent next turn. But yeah, the only merit to it is it's both Don Quixote and Navy, so it's searchable by both. So you need a 2K. It also helps the count be higher. Like I said, you want to run 22 to 24 of each target. That way you don't whiff as much, and that being both really helps smooth out the being able to run both packages.
I gotcha. And then we have 4 of the 1-cost Tsuru. Now with this card, this would make a total of 8 2K counters in the deck for the Vergos and now 4 of the Tsurus. Is 8 2K counters just enough for the deck, or could you possibly see yourself adding in more in the future? As well as for Tsuru specifically, has it been more of a 2K counter or more of a -2 cost reducer? What is your experience on that?
Yeah, so Tsuru is obviously the best 2K counter in black, and I don't think it's close. 2K counter that for 1 Dawn that ETBs reduces something is really, really strong. I only ran 8 2K counters because there's 2 ways to play Perona in my opinion. One is a more tempo-y version where you're just controlling the board and poking your opponent and then just slamming big dudes and ending the game. And then there's also the very control-y version, which is I'm just going to kill your board and starve you and then drop an 8-drop kid and control you from there. And that version, I believe, plays 12 2Ks. I tested that version as well. But in my opinion, in One Piece in general, control is just not a viable option. The Dawn and having a leader that attacks you every turn, control is just not possible to me, in my opinion. The closest to control you get is like just KOing your opponent's board and controlling the game, which is what you do with Perona. But I think you have to eventually end the game and poke them. So yeah, I think Tsuru is a great card. I played it a lot to reduce as well as 2K, so it's versatile. But I would say I probably use it about the same for both ways. It is one of your important targets to get back with Gecko Moria because you sometimes need to KO something bigger, and Ryuma obviously only does 4. But yeah, I mean, it's just the best black counter in the game. So 50-50 for using it.
Okay, gotcha. Then we have 2 of the 0 cost spell. Whoever wins this war becomes justice. Now this card is pretty much an extension of your 2K counters, simply because it does net you a total of 3K counter value. And its trigger can come in clutch at times. Because you only run 8 2K counters, is this card potentially also another reason why you can get away with only 8? Or maybe the 0 cost spell was something to synergize with a lot of the big bodies that have no counter value, the bricks, so it kind of helps you out with counter measures, as well as from your experience, has the 2 ratio worked out for your deck? Or once again, did it just have to do with like how tight the deck list was?
Yeah, so that's the reason why I also cut down on my counters, is because you can play that card. It's a search build for the Don Quixote pirates, so it's a 2 more count to make your deck more consistent. It's really good in my opinion because you are running a lot of bricks. I run like 2 Kuzans, 2 Brooks, 8 Geckos can be a brick sometimes, the 10 cost Doffy can be a brick sometimes, and the Zoro I run can be a brick sometimes. So sometimes you do need to get rid of some of those bricks in your hand that you can't cycle out or you don't see Sabo, and yeah, it helps you get away with only running 8 2Ks, and it's also a surprise to them if they don't see it. But yeah, also like you said, it can randomly trigger off a life and save you.
Okay, and in terms of the trigger, how many times actually have you been able to use the trigger? Is it just kind of like a smaller ratio to actually just using the 0 cost spell for its main effect, or have you actually somehow managed to use the trigger a lot more than you expected?
Yeah, so the trigger doesn't actually happen very often because most of the time, most leaders are 4 drops or 4 life, 4 life or 5 life, obviously that's as high as it goes. But like I said, I'm more of a tempo based deck. I'm going to be poking you probably more than a lot, so you're going to be at like 2 to 3 life by the time I trigger it. So I never really used the trigger. I used it like one time when I was about to die and I tapped like one of their searchers, like a I think I tapped a Sindri so I wouldn't die, which was weird, but it's like one of those like once in a blue moon things. It's not going to happen very often. So
okay, gotcha. Then we have 4 of the 8-drop Gecko. I'm sure everybody by now knows how powerful of a card this guy is and its ability to summon 2 characters from the grave. But since this is Perona and not the other decks people are familiar with that use this card, could you tell us a little bit about what different combos and strategies you typically do when summoning this card? What has been the most consistent options or the main targets and combos you go for when summoning the 8-drop Gecko?
Obviously Gecko is the best card in the game. I don't think it's close. 8 Dawn for 9k power, 2 bodies into play with Dawn Despair is so crazy. Being able to get back Ryuma is pretty crazy because you can get back Ryuma tap. Like I said, if they're gonna try to kill it, they have to do it in a weird way. So that lets you get back your searchers. Like you can get a baby 5 and you still have the 2 Dawn active to activate it. You can get Brannew. You can do like the value Gecko plays from like Sakazuki and stuff and get back Brannew and Kuzan, or you can even do like Kuzan and Rosinante. There's so many different combinations you can do with the Gecko in the deck that works. It's just gonna come down to what situation you're in. There's just so many different things you can do. Value, clear board, just apply more pressure. It's just the best card in the game. So obviously you got to play 4. It's not searchable. That's why you play the 4 Sabos and stuff, because you got to find the card. But yeah,
gotcha. And then we have 2 of the 9-drop Zoro. So go ahead and talk to us a little bit about why you only chose a ratio of 2 and why maybe in this build you might have actually opted out for the Zoro instead of the 8-drop kid. What are your kind of thoughts on approaching this 9-drop Zoro?
So 9-drop Zoro was probably the best card in my deck a whole weekend. It is just a massive bomb. I played with the 8-drop kid a decent amount and tested it. The actual card itself is very powerful, but you still have to play the game. So like if you're behind and you play it, the 8-drop kid, and they have a way to kill it, you're still in the same pickle you are. As opposed to Zoro, where when you slam it down, it's not rested and they can't attack it. If you have a Rosinante, or if you have things in play to keep it protected, you just don't lose the game. You win the game pretty much after you untap with it. So there's a lot of times where I'd slam Doffy and poke their board and then slam Zoro in a safe spot because we cleared their board with Doffy and they didn't get to play, or vice versa. Like you poke them with Zoro, they do a weird block, and then you play Doffy and lock their board and then kill them next turn with basically the combo is attack you for 16,000 3 times. No deck can survive that. The reason I played it though is because Black Yellow Luffy, if you play Zoro against Black Yellow Luffy, it's an auto win. If they have a Sabo and no life, you still are attacking them 3 times for 16,000. They can't survive that. Or if you play Tsuru and then tap their Sabo, it's 3 attacks for 15k. Can't survive that obviously either. It did auto win me my Black Yellow Luffy matchup. It also won me my mirror matches, and against a Gecko player, they used all the Ice Ages early and I slammed it and they could not win the game. So in my opinion, Zoro was the best tech card I chose. I owe a lot of my wins to it. Like I said, it's 8-drop kid, very powerful, very strong, but you still have to play the game. And there's a lot of play still after you drop 8-drop kid. Zoro ends the game.
Yeah, so you would agree pretty much this 9-drop Zoro was actually the reason why some, maybe half or most of your matches were actually won?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, gotcha. Then lastly for the deck, we have 4 of the 10-drop Doffy. This card is of course searchable, but also holds a lot of power, being able to freeze the board state for your opponent's whole turn. Would you say this card is also a win condition just like Zoro, if you're able to drop them back to back? Is your deck able to still close out games without the 10-drop? Talk to us a little bit about how powerful and important this card is for the deck.
Yeah, it's definitely the end game. So the whole premises of the deck is you want to stall until you drop bombs. Gecko, Doffy, and Zoro. 10-drop Doffy is probably the reason the reason that you have a good matchup against Gecko. Perona actually has a favorite matchup against Gecko, because when you play Gecko or Doffy and lock down a Gecko Moria, their leader, and a body, they don't have their leader's ability. And that's why Gecko is so powerful, is they have the leader ability to constantly toolbox their graveyard. But when they don't get to access that and they have to play with the cards in their hand, they can be in quite a pickle sometimes. And then also you're untapping with the 10,000 power attacker. And then if you chain them, it's just not fun to play. I've been on the receiving end of it. I've done it to people. It's not a good time. Whenever you play a Doffy, lock their board, they do some measly stuff, and then you do it again. It's not fun for them, really fun for you, but yeah, you definitely need to see it. You can win without seeing it. There were games that I actually never got to play Doffy because I was contesting boards so much with geckos and stuff, and but yeah, there are some games you don't play it, but most of the time when you do play them, you just lock the game up.
Okay, gotcha. And then when it comes to the Perona leader itself and the deck, of course. Now, why did you actually end up picking out the Perona deck? Did you feel like it was a meta call for the EBO1 format? Would you say it's actually an underrated deck, or maybe people might sleep on its potential? And what has been like your history with the Perona deck? Talk to us a little bit about your thought process and reasoning why Perona was the call going into this regionals.
So the reason I chose Perona, like I said, in my testing of EBO1, I was actually I thought Anel would be bigger. So in my first testing, I actually was testing Rebecca. I think Cross played Rebecca. I couldn't find success with it. Deck's too hard, not power. Like the deck is good, but it's not powerful. It doesn't do anything broken. So then I moved on to Purple Yellow Crocodile, which does something broken. The combo of Okama Way with Okika Nojo is crazy. Like it catches people off. If they aren't playing around it, it just wins the game single-handedly. I thought the deck was really powerful. 8-drop Croc and 9-cost Yamato are really good cards. So I played that for a little while, but when I tested against Enel, I just couldn't win. Just outvalued. They just lived longer and they played more bombs than me, like 8 Katakuri and stuff. So I could not triumph that matchup, so that's why I shelved the deck. And then I came across Perona. It's always been like one of my fun pet decks that I think is cool, but I never actually played it because of how bad it was. Its worst matchup is Sakazuki, but obviously Sakazuki's banned, so that opened it up more. So its worst matchup being gone, and I was like, maybe this deck could be really good. And then I tested it a little and I was like, wait, this deck has a really good matchup against Gecko, which is one of the most popular decks, and not a bad matchup against Law. Like it's really close, but if they don't open up broken and like their broken start of like just rushing you down, the matchups I think in your favor, probably like 5-10%. Not much, but it is in your favor, just a tad. Obviously there are some draws from the Law deck you can't beat, like if they like do their crazy combos with multiple Reijus and Kid Killers and stuff. But yeah, so if they don't open that, I think the matchup's actually in your favor a little. And those are the two most represented decks. So I was like, well, deck is really good against those two decks. Let me test it out. And I had a lot of success testing it. And basically I was like, well, the tournament's coming up. I'm just going to commit to playing this. And I'm really happy I did.
Gotcha. And then we go on to the matchups for the day one of the total 10 rounds for the top cut. First round, you actually went against a Gecko Moria. Now talk to us about if you can kind of remember who actually won that dice roll, as well as in this matchup, Perona versus Gecko. Do you prefer second? Do you prefer first? As well as talk to us a little bit about like how do you navigate that matchup?
Funny enough, I only won one dice roll all day. I was one for nine, and it was against the Uta player, one of the Uta players.
Okay.
But I lost dice roll basically every time, and I was on the play. So, but like I said, you have a really good Gecko matchup. All you have to do is constantly keep their board down, counter a little aggressively, so you're not getting Perona loop, but you still want to get the Peronas off the board to keep pressure off of you. And then once you hit 10 Dawn or 9 Dawn, you just start slamming big boys, and it's easy as that, in my opinion. You just the first like 4 or 5 turns are the hardest for you, and then just start slamming big dudes, and it all ties up to that.
Gotcha. And for that matchup specifically for the round one, was there anything during that match that you can kind of recollect that you can kind of see as the main point of when you were pretty much winning or losing, or how that match pretty much went?
Yeah, I mean, so the matchup basically still goes the same as you'd think it would. It's they play you're going first, so they don't get to do the Perona crazy, like the Syndra Perona crazy thing that they normally get to do, because they want to take your curve away, and obviously your curve is way more important than theirs. So you do have a little reprieve in the early game. Like you can turn one, you can play like a searcher, you can play your baby 5 to use its ability, and then play like a Brannew or something, and then activate it as well, so you search twice. Pretty much just playing dudes. Pray you see a Borsalino a little early so you can defend out from the 7k swings, because when Gecko goes second, they're going to be on their 7 attack for 7, play a dude, attack for 7, play a dude, play a Brannew or something like that, along those lines. So you definitely want to try to find a Borsalino to try to defend out of those, or yeah, so it's just survive until you start slamming your big dudes.
Okay.
Pretty much cookie cutter, same thing every match.
Then we have round 2. You faced a green Uta. Now, same thing. I know you mentioned with the dice roll. Did they end up making you go first or second? And as a Perona player, do you actually prefer first or second? And pretty much how did this matchup go?
Yeah, so I actually won that dice roll, if I recall. The Uta deck is weird. You're supposed to have a favored matchup against it, but sometimes their draws are too strong and I feel like you're on the back foot. But it's pretty much the same thing. Like Perona does the same thing against every matchup. It's survive a little early and start slamming bombs. Your bombs are way better than theirs. That matchup actually was very funny because they had 3 Luffys on the board, and I just kept playing Doffys like over and over, and I eventually overwhelmed their hand. And Zoro closed the game out. So they like did a turn where they like played Luffy, and then I attacked with like my leader, and he blocked with the Luffy, and I played Doffy, locked their board down, and then I attacked with Doffy into their Luffy, killed the Luffy, and then played a Zoro to make sure I was safe. And then once that bad boy resolves, the game's pretty easy from there.
Okay, so you'd say pretty much that 9-drop Zoro just got you the clutch W and pretty much just got you the guaranteed win.
Yep, definitely would say that.
Gotcha. Then we have round 3. You actually ended up facing against a red purple law. So did you end up going first or second? Which do you prefer, and how did this match go?
Pretty much every match I went first because obviously I lost the dice roll.
Right.
The law matchup is, like I said, just poke them. A lot of people actually do not know how to play against Perona with law. It is something that you have to know that you're supposed to not really play anything in the first couple turns. You just attack for 8, attack for 9, attack for 11, and then play dudes when you can play multiple dudes. Because my deck can really only KO like one thing a turn due to like obviously don't have a Lucci, like the Lucci combo. I just have Ryuma or Brook or X-Drake, and those are really heavy on Dawn. So yeah. The matchup actually is not that bad if they don't know how to play against it, because obviously they just are playing their dudes and not pressuring you very hard. So you just kill their dudes and keep the pressure going back at them. Okay. So yeah, it basically went like that. He just didn't, I don't think he knew the matchup very well. So he just played dudes and I just kept killing him. And then eventually I overwhelmed him.
Okay, so you say this match pretty much went in your favor because not only did he not have enough knowledge on the matchup, he also just kind of played into your strategy and you're able to play reactionary as well.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest advantage I had with the deck is like a lot of people weren't expecting Perona. I know some people were and it was on their radar, but a lot of people don't know how to play against it, at it being not a complete meta deck and people knowing about it. So I think that was one of my biggest advantages. People just were unfamiliar with the matchup. I mean, honestly, I went to a regional and played Sakazuki, and I was very unfamiliar with the matchup, and I lost to Perona because I was so unfamiliar with the matchup, even though it's supposed to be a great matchup for me.
Okay, gotcha. Then we have round 4, you ended up facing a mirror against another Perona player. Now this one's interesting because I guess in this case, you could probably approach this in one or two ways. One, you pretty much know your own deck, so you know the strategy and how to play into it. Or two, maybe you're also thinking maybe they have a different deck list. Did you kind of think maybe your deck list was an advantage for mirror, or was just better built for the matchup? What was kind of like your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I definitely think not intentionally, but I definitely think my deck was better suited for the mirror match, mainly because I run 4 Sabos. A lot of people only run 3, but 4 Sabos is really good. Lets you play 2 threats or 2 bodies in a turn without being at the mercy of Ryuma being comboed back. And I also run 9-drop Zoro. Like I said, the card is very, very good. Perona doesn't really have a real way of getting rid of it unless they have a Kuzan on board. It's nearly impossible unless they run Ice Age, which most people didn't because obviously the deck is really tight. But I lost the dice roll of that match, obviously, and he was like, you go first. I drew it and I played it on 9, and they could not win because obviously you're a 4-life leader. Yeah. If you want to slam Doffy on your turn 10, I'm just gonna attack you for 16 3 times and you're probably dead. But yeah, so I really caught him off guard. He was like, oh, I was not expecting that, and it won me the match. Well, that was one of the matches that Zoro literally just carried, and I won the match because of it.
Okay, so for sure it seems like in that mirror matchup, whoever can get that Zoro to stick first pretty much wins. And luckily for you, went first, even though not typically something you want to go second, but you did get the 9-drop and you're able to drop it on curve.
Yeah, so obviously a lot of the Perona players know that you want to go second. Your curve is very even. There's nothing off curve in your deck except for odd curve, except for Sabo, and if you run it 9-drop Zoro. So him telling me to go first, that was another big reason I played Zoro, is because you don't mind going first. Sometimes you definitely want to take second if you win the dice roll, but in the random times you lose the dice roll, and they make you go first, and you mulligan or find the Zoro on 9, you're not disadvantaged anymore.
Okay, gotcha. Then next up we have round 5. You faced a Yamato. Can you just talk to us about how this matchup went and how you ended up getting the win?
So yeah, I lost the dice roll again. They took first. Yamato is actually one of the worst matchups for Perona, as they don't really play many dudes, and their whole strategy is poking you or hitting you with a double strike leader and then ending the game. As you already went over my deck list, I don't run many 2Ks, but luckily for me in this matchup, I did go, he went turn 1 pass, I went my turn 1 play Rosinante. He put 3 Dawn, attacked, I blocked, and then he played he went play Yamato, and I went play Bonnie, activate Baby 5, activate Baby 5, find another Rosinante, play Rosinante, and then he just attacked with his leader for big, and I blocked because I guess he didn't want his Yamato to be KO'd by Ryuma. But me finding multiple Rosinantes in the early game is ultimately what led me to win this matchup. It is a really bad matchup, don't get me wrong. You will just die sometimes, but luckily for me, I found multiple Rosinantes to stabilize and stay safe, and then I just started slamming Doffys, and he lost because I was on my even curve.
Okay, gotcha. So pretty much this matchup came down to being able to see your blockers and just any kind of defensive cards that would just help you survive, and so you can pretty much set up for the most part.
Yeah, it's almost unwinnable if you don't see, probably I'd say 3 to 4 blockers. You want to see like 2 Rosinantes and a Borsalino and a Sabo maybe, but without seeing multiple blockers, you're probably gonna lose.
Okay, gotcha. Then next up we have round 6 versus Black Yellow Luffy. So talk to us about pretty much how you ended up winning this match and how things went in your favor.
Yeah, so another a matchup that's supposed to be favorable. I didn't think it's that favorable, honestly, with all my testing and stuff, but like I said, people say it's favorable because of 8-drop kid, but obviously I cut 8-drop kid because there's still play to the card. I lost dice roll, obviously. They made me go first, and when I played Zoro on 9, they pretty much conceded because they said I can't win. Zoro is an auto win against Black Yellow Luffy, like I said. If you play it, if you lose a dice roll and they make you go first and you play it, they pretty much don't get to play the game, because if they do their combo, they go to 0 life, put a Sabo into play, woohoo, you have 3 huge swings that they cannot survive. So yeah, Zoro in my opinion is actually just an auto win. You auto win the match whenever you play it, and yeah, so he made me go first. I kind of just sat there and looked at him, didn't attack him, and he did his he did his thing of play the little dudes that enable him, and he got to 2 life, and then I played Zoro and he was like, yeah, I lose.
Yep, so basically just another victim with the 9-drop Zoro in this case as well.
Yep.
Gotcha. And then next up we have a spicy matchup. Round 7, you played against a purple yellow Croc. Kind of talked about how this match went and pretty much, you know, what did you do to navigate this matchup as well?
Yeah, so I really wasn't expecting to see this matchup, and I was undefeated at this point, so I was 6-0 going into the round. And I sit down and they pull out yellow purple Croc, and I was like, wow, I was gonna play this deck, but obviously I didn't find that much success with it. But apparently this guy is. My bombs are just way better than his. I have Gecko Moria, which is literally one dude for 3 dudes, Doffy and Zoro. It was literally us slamming bombs back and forth, and then eventually I played like Doffy into Doffy, and he can recover from that. Basically just kept him at 2 life, so his Yamato never really got super value, and he was still at range to kill. He'd play a Croc and go to 3, I'd just poke him back to 2, because you want to keep him relatively low. That way, you can just kill them when you need to, but you do have to watch out for Okamoe. It is a card that you need to play around, and if you are not aware of the card, you will lose. But yeah, I mean, I think you can starve the deck, but in my opinion, I just don't like starving. I hate starving decks. Like Black Yellow Luffy is fine because they'll kill themselves, but I just hate playing matchups where they have to starve. I think you're disadvantaged in my opinion. Obviously sometimes you have to, but I hate doing it, so I like to be a little more aggressive. Like I said, my deck is built more to like poke you and kill your stuff and then just kill you, less so control.
Okay, and pretty much against this purple yellow Croc, you would say it just came down to battle of the boss monsters, and your higher drops ended up just having a lot more value and just ended up getting the win.
Yeah, your boss monsters are way stronger. Gecko and Doffy are way better than Crocodile and Yamato.
Then next you went into round 8 against a Gecko Moria, again since your round 1. What was it kind of like your thoughts? How were you feeling going into this matchup, and did you think you were actually going to win? How did you navigate this?
Like I said, Gecko's probably your best matchup. It's why I played the deck. I think that like if I see a Gecko sit across from me, I'm pretty happy because I'm like, oh, my best matchup. And a lot of the Gecko players knew it was their worst matchup. I don't know, like they knew it was their worst matchup. I don't think they knew why, but they knew it was like a bad matchup for them. But yeah, it ended up coming down. That was, I think, the match where I played Kuzan, Sabo, and then untapped, and then they played a Gecko, and then I attacked, rested their Gecko, and then played my own Gecko and annihilated their whole board, and then just 10-drop Doffy. The Gecko deck really has a hard time dealing with 10-drop Doffy. That's the main reason why it's a good matchup for you. So if you can see like 1 or 2 of those, you should be good.
Okay, so you would say pretty much this went down to, obviously, you knew the matchup, you knew how to navigate it, and maybe you think a lot of the Gecko players, even if they knew that it's a bad matchup, because they didn't know exactly why or how, like you said, that might have also played into the downfall.
Yeah, I definitely think it helped a lot that they don't know that well. But yeah, I agree. I think that it helps a lot that my deck was a dark horse of the tournament, and I think that not many people knew the matchup very well. So I definitely think that that's what helped a lot. But yeah, Gecko's supposed to be your best matchup, and it's the reason why I think one of the big reasons I chose the deck, because I knew Gecko was going to be highly represented, and it's your best matchup.
Gotcha. Then you went into round 9 against another green Uta, since you revisited from round 2. So pretty much your thoughts going into this. How did you feel this far going into the tournament, and just kind of like how the match was navigated?
Yeah, so I mean, I was 8-0 at this point. I was super happy with my performance. I was like, holy crap, I'm locked for day 2, I'm pretty sure, because we were already talking about how there's only one undefeated and stuff. So I think I knew that I was already locked for day 2, so I was just happy to be locked, and I was just playing. Funny enough, I lost to the best card in my deck.
Oh, wow.
I lost to Zoro because I had a really good turn of play Doffy, lock their board, and then I was ready to untap and play my Zoro. But my opponent had other plans, and he was like, yeah, I drew the Zoro, so I played the Zoro. And obviously, you cannot play Zoro into Zoro, you will die.
Yeah.
So him drawing the Zoro won him that match. And I talked to him about it, and he's like, yeah, I drew it, played it, and the only reason I won the match. And I'm like, yeah, that is indeed. But it happens. It's One Piece, you're playing best of 1. It's going to happen sometimes.
Gotcha. So that matchup, it pretty much just comes down to if they both run the 9-drop Zoro, whoever can pretty much slam it down first and go from there.
Yeah, well, so actually, not really, because your 9-drop Zoro will not kill them immediately, because obviously Uta is a very defensive deck, and they play a bunch of counter. They'll have a bunch of cards in hand, and they're a 5-life leader, so your Zoro is not going to kill them immediately. It will help a lot. Like, obviously, don't get me wrong, you will take over the board and you should win, but it is not going to insta win you. It will insta win them. You are a 3-life leader, and they've been poking you the whole game. You're probably, or 4-life leader, they've been poking you the whole game. Probably at 2-life, 3 if you're lucky, and they're not super aggressive, but you can't block Zoro. He's just too big.
I gotcha. And then finally, the last round, going into a mirror for round 10 against another Perona. Now, at this point, you're pretty much X1. I'm sure you're feeling great. You already know you're locked in for day 2. But were you kind of excited, at least just to go against another Perona to see maybe how their build is a bit different than yours? And were you still pretty much confident in the mirror match, just in terms of your build being better? How did this matchup go?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty confident in the mirror, not because I have infinite testing, but just because of my knowledge of the deck. I actually had no prior testing in the mirror match before this tournament, so I was kind of going in dark, but I was pretty familiar with my deck and I knew what to do and how to navigate it. This was the one match though that I was kind of confused about, because he was playing the Wano package. Obviously his a lot less strong. Like I said, the deck is a lot less consistent. You don't have cards to play to use You Are My Samurai, but he was still playing all of those cards and everything. So I think in the end my deck just out consistent his, and obviously he made me go first. I lost the dice roll. I played Zoro and he's like, oh yeah, that's kind of game.
Got you. So this just came down to yet again another Zoro victim, but also a build difference as well.
Yeah, so definitely the Zoro victim, but I think in the end, like, my build was just better too.
Okay, and then now we go into day 2. So pretty much you're locked in. You're gonna be playing the best of 3s. So your first match was against Gecko. Talk to us about game 1, game 2, and if there was a game 3, and kind of like your game plan going into this.
Yeah, so game 1, I was on the draw finally. I worked so hard to get 9-1. I got to choose whether to be a play or draw every match, pretty much until the end. I chose to go second. I curved out on him. Gecko on 8, Doffy on 10, Doffy on 10, and it was a wrap from there. Game 2, he ended up going second, and then he's showing me on his 8-down turn, and I did not have a Kuzan or anything to get rid of it, so that card basically took over the game. Then I went second again, and basically the same thing. I curved out Gecko on 8, Zoro I think on 10, and then attack, then Doffy on 10, and then untapped and killed him.
Okay, would you say pretty much a huge reasoning why you're able to not only get the win but also get a lot of pressure out the matches is due to the fact that you actually were able to pick your dice roll, being able to go second first match, and then of course second third match? Did it play a huge role? Do you think things would have been insanely different if it was maybe the other way around, that they got to pick?
Yeah, I definitely think, well, it's a good matchup for me. It would have helped them, but being able to choose player draw definitely made me feel a lot better about it. It is the reward for doing well in Swiss, so I think it is well deserved. But yeah, definitely choosing the player draw is very impactful and very important.
Gotcha. And then you went on to the next best of 3 match, another Gecko. What are your thoughts going into this? Once again, you know you feel comfortable going into the matchup. You're comfortable being able to pick whether going first or second. It's kind of like your thought process going in for the second match.
Yeah, so I ended up playing actually one of our other local friends. Shout out to Timmy. Congrats on your top. Sorry I had to take you out. But he already knew what we were going to. So funny enough, top 32 or top 64 was open deck list. So you can see your opponent's deck. A lot of the Gecko deck are edging towards playing Ice Age again. And Ice Age is really good against my deck. Obviously, I just play bombs. So if you can get rid of my bombs with your Ice Age, you're in a great spot. Timmy chose to not play Ice Age and play more of like defensive-ish package, which is a lot better against Law. Like I said, Law was the boogeyman of the tournament, Law and Gecko. So everyone was like, oh, I think I'm playing against Law. So they started cutting Ice Ages. But conveniently, them cutting Ice Age, really bad against Perona. I can't get rid of my bomb. So I ended up going second. And then exactly like the first match, curved out, beat him. Game 2, he showed me on 8 Dawn. I lost, and then game 3 came down to the wire. He played 3 Geckos on me, and I just played Doffy, keeping him locked down. And then I got to the turn where I was like, I have a Gecko, a Doffy, and my leader swing, and you have 2 life and like 2 cards in hand, so I have to go for it. And I ended up, or he had like 5 cards in hand, so I had to go for it, and he didn't have the perfect.
Okay, gotcha. And then finally, the last match against Black Yellow Luffy. Now, this one's interesting because you actually ended up playing on the live stream, and talks a little about a funny story on your special request to not play on live stream, as well as the reasoning why, the lore behind just, you know, the bad experiences you've had with live matches. Talk to us a little about everything about the whole situation.
Yeah, so I come from a Magic background. I'm a semi-pro Magic player. I had good success in it in my opinion, for being not like super pro, obviously not, but I had like 4 back-to-back top 8s and Dallas events, big Dallas events. I have a GP top. I have been to the Pro Tour, but I have never won on live stream in Magic except one time. I've had like been on camera like 5 or 6 times, and I've only won once. I don't know why, but I just lose every time. And I was on live stream during Swiss in round 9, and that was my only loss too. I don't know why. It's just I either get unlucky, my brain turns off, which is what happened in this match. I don't know why, which is very uncharacteristic of me. I'm pretty good about staying cool and under pressure situations. So it's not that I don't mind being on camera. I actually don't mind being on camera. I just don't know why I lose so much on camera. Yeah, so I actually requested not to be on camera. I was like, this is an important match. Can I not be on camera? And apparently when you enter the tournament, you sign a consent form basically saying, yeah, right. I can be on camera.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I can be on camera. So I didn't get the option, which really sucked because the curse continues. Game 1, he opened the nuts. I did not try to cheat as much as people say. Like I said, the camera like rattles my brain or something. For some reason, I rested his flampe and attacked it and then tried to reduce his ace. In my head, I wanted the flampe gone so I could play Ryuma to pop the ace and play baby 5 to activate it safely. I apologize. I tried to activate my leader twice and I realized it and I said, oh crap, I did do that. Because in my head, I was like, oh, just kill the flampe, then reduce and KO. I don't know why. So that was my thought process. I'm sorry for all the people who think I cheated. I didn't do it intentionally, I promise. So yeah, then I ended up just playing Sabo, which in the end was probably a better play anyway because I needed to dig for cards. He already had played 2 Flampes and a Garp, so he was already steam rolling. And then he played a Hiyori and just went nuts. I don't even think if I had what I wanted, I could have won the matchup. He opened the straight stone. And then game 2, obviously, we all know I blundered a little bit. I got to a really big turn where I should have gone for it. After talking about it with my friends, I did have perfect lethal, even though in my head I was like 15-15 is not perfect lethal, but even then I should have done that. But we did math it out and we figured out there was a perfect lethal sequence. It was like attack with Kuzan, reduce the Sabo, rest the Sabo. I put 3 Dawn under Doffy, attack for 13. That way, if he uses 3 cards, he has 1 card in hand, and I just do 11 with Doffy and then 12 with my leader, and it should be game. In the end, I couldn't come to that line for some reason. Like I said, camera gives me brain rot or something. I didn't do that, and then conveniently, I was supposed to win the next turn, but in my head, sometimes when you get into these matches, you make a plan, you make a roadmap, and you're like, all right, I have this, this is the way it's gonna go. If somehow this fails, it's done. So the first part of my turn the second part of that turn after I untapped, he had 2 Sabos and 1 life and I think 3 cards in hand. So I attacked, did the same thing, attacked, rest 1 of the Sabos, when in reality, the 12 at the face was fine because I think I put 8 Dawn under my leader and attacked, and he countered out of it with all 3 cards in his hand. For some reason, in my head, I was supposed to go 8, or I was supposed to go like 11, 12, 12, and that did not work out because he countered obviously. But in reality, I was supposed to do that and then put 4 Dawn into Borsalino, attack for 9. He has to block, attack for 10 with Doffy, take the last life, attack for 10, take the game. I don't know why I didn't do it. Like I said, I had that roadmap planned in my head of doing the 11, 12, 12 or whatever. And yeah, I just, after I fist bumped him, I looked down at my cards again and I was like, wow, I had it. And I don't know why I didn't do it. Not a fun memory in my opinion. Happy I topped, obviously. I think I played excellent up until that one match. Played great the whole weekend. But for some reason, that one match, I just fumbled the bag. I'm sorry to anyone who was rooting for me in the top cut. Sorry to my friends. Sorry, especially sorry to Timmy. I'm so sorry I beat you and fumbled the bag. But nothing I can do about it. I just gotta learn from it and not do it again.
Yeah, all right. And then pretty much to wrap this up, looking back, do you have any comments and stuff you want to add moving forward with the deck? Maybe stuff you wanted to add and change? And after that, any shoutouts, any last things you want to pretty much give out to the audience?
I think the deck is really good for the 2 week of the format. Obviously, the deck drastically changes when OPS 7 comes out. You get to play the Wano package. I've already been cooking up what I'm going to play at Gen Con. I'm going to Gen Con to play in both of those tournaments, so I'm probably going to play Perona at those tournaments as well. I've been in the lab testing and figuring things out. Hopefully I get my run back and top that tournament as well. But yeah, I think the deck is pretty good where it's at. I wouldn't really change anything if I was playing in an event this weekend. Shout out to all of Galaxy, all the boys at Galaxy, Omar, Ricky, Pau, especially Ricky for helping me test and everything. Shout out to my friends Nick, Hervey, and the fam. But yeah, I'm super happy I finally got my first real top. Hopefully I can run it back twice in Gen Con.